This is the XY Ghost, bringing you wisdom and knowledge to both men, young and old. Today I'm going to talk to you about single moms. And no, I'm not going to reiterate the things you've heard already, that, women, dating a single mom or marrying a single mom or cohabitating with a single mom is going to be tough. Yeah, it's going to be tough, of course. These other videos will say something like, oh, she won't have enough time for you. And that's okay, because we're not, as men, we're not attention seekers. We're not, we don't want constant attention and constant affection all the time, 24 hours a day. But we wouldn't mind not getting the attention if our loved one was tending to our kids. We would understand that. We understand sacrifice as a man. Another thing is a lot of these places or a lot of these people are going to talk about women not being financially secure. Of course, they're not going to be financially secure as a single mom. And again, we would sacrifice, put in the extra hours, put in the extra time to provide for these women. And I got to say this word, provide. Yes, we would provide for women, and we would provide for our family. And we wouldn't mind that she wasn't making a lot of money. If she was working and you were working and you were together working for your own children, your collective children. But you're going to be sacrificing for somebody else's kid. Now, I grew up in a single mother household. Mother was a single mother. She threw her fists up in solidarity for the women's rights movement and the women's liberation movement in the 1960s. So I know what it's like to be in a single parent household, a single mom household. Yeah, my mother lived in government housing, and yeah, I know. She did what she did to survive. But I'm going to tell you something that I rarely hear about, choosing a life with a single mom that doesn't have your kids. And that is the idea that, well, let me put it to you this way. Women of today, they do not like, they'll look through your phone and to find pictures of other girls, and they don't like that. They'll question every single girl that you have on your phone. Oops, I got some mail. Anyway, they'll question every single picture of every woman that you have in your phone. Back when I was young, I used to take pictures a lot, and I used to be a photographer. And one of my cousins that I finally met when I was like 19 years old was a model. She was a model, and she was grooming herself to be in pageants. Miss Teen America, Miss America, Mrs. America, whatever it was. She was grooming herself. She was doing all these pageants. And I had some of her pictures in a photo album, an actual book containing actual pictures. And I put it on my coffee table. And from time to time, I had girlfriends that would look through these pictures, and they see this, beautiful, dolled up woman in my photo album, which was my cousin, and they would ask me with this untrusting eye, who is this woman? Who is this girl? Who is she? And even though I said this is her, my cousin, they wouldn't believe me. I had to bring out her actual headshot that contained her name and measurements and everything, and her last name was the same as mine. And even then they were suspicious. Women are so insanely jealous of other women. They don't want you to be close to your mom. They don't want you to be close to your sister. They don't want you to be close to any other woman except them. But why does that have to do with single mothers? Well, if women don't want you to have pictures of other women in your phone or your photo album, why do you have to tolerate the living embodiment of her last sexual, not her last sexual act, but, one of her sexual acts? I mean, and I'm not even going to say it's her love, interest, because she had no interest in him. You have two living, breathing, or one or two living, breathing embodiments of her ex. She won't tolerate you to have a picture of some other woman, but you have to tolerate her children. That's a product of her past lover. Now, I live in a single mom household, and a lot of my mother's boyfriends, you tell me things, what to do and how to live my life, and I'm like, stop, you're not my father. Who the hell are you? You come visit here once in a while. You get, sob stories from my mom, and you believe them wholeheartedly instead of figure out what's going on and what the two sides of the story is, and you're taking her side, and all of a sudden you try to be my father. You're not my father. Well, if you partner with a single mom and you try to discipline her children, another man's children, you're going to get the same result. You're going to get the child saying, you're not my dad, you're not my dad, you can't boss me around, you can't tell me what to do. Well, that's true. That's true. You're not going to have any clout. Not like you're searching for clout, but you're not going to have any clout with that girl, those children. Now, I got to tell you, I've known people that married single moms and they moved in and whatever. And one of my coworkers, this has got to be like 1995. One of my coworkers was talking to me about, his contemplation of moving in with his girlfriend who was a single mom. And I said, don't do it. No, but she's not like that. And I wasn't really into MGTOW understanding until, a few years ago. I told him, don't do it. Don't do it. It's not good. Well, he did, and he ended up marrying the woman and everything. And what happened was, a few months later, he came and talked to me, and he said, hey, the woman, the daughter of the woman I just married, she's 16 years old, and she's walking around the house with no clothes on. I mean, not no clothes on, but, skimpy clothing, and she walks with her underwear around the house. And I said, well, what are you telling the mother? Yeah, I told the mother, but she says, oh, she's going through a phase. That's it. Let her be a girl. But then he was telling me how flirtatious this 15-year-old or 16-year-old girl was to him. Now, if there was a father there, that 15 or 16-year-old girl would not be flirtatious with the father. But you married a single mom, and there's definitely some flirtation going on. It got to the point where he didn't want to come home until his wife got home. And a man's home is his castle. And if you're not comfortable of being home with in your castle, then it's not your castle anymore. Another story was, I was doing work for a hotel, and I was talking to the purchasing manager, of this hotel in a loading dock. In the loading dock of the hotel, and a truck driver drove in with supplies and everything. And as he stepped out of the truck, some guy came over and beat the crap out of him, yelling, "Who the hell are you to tell my kid what to do?" And, you know, spanking them. And the guy beat the crap out of this guy because the truck driver married his ex, and now he's, you know, disciplining another man's child. And the father of that child took offense to that and took it out on the man. Oh yeah, this I'll watch this thing happen. The cops were called. The New York City cops, these were New York City cops that are itching to arrest anybody. They backed off and they sided with the man who beat up the truck driver. And, no arrest. I don't think any arrests happened because I sort of left it towards the end, but I heard the cops telling the guy, "You spanked another man's kid? It doesn't matter, Who the hell are you?" Another thing about single moms is that a lot of times the single mom has a daughter, and if you're young and you're trying to date some, young girl of a single mom, you're going to get a lot of resistance from that mother, because that mother doesn't want her daughter to have a decent relationship with a man or a young boy. That single mom wants that daughter to attract men for her when they go out. You've seen these mother-daughter go out together, and mother-daughter go, nights, and the mothers dress up all nice and tries to look like sister to her daughter. She wants to use her child to look younger again, and she doesn't want another man in her daughter's life to take that away from her. You understand? That daughter is for her and for her only. When I was younger, I used to date girls my age at the time, maybe in my 20s or teens. I used to date girls that were daughters of single moms. And the single moms used to push me away from the daughters. Not that I was grotesque or immoral or disgusting or whatever. I was a normal kid. Some of the single moms, and I got to tell you, I was like 18, 19, maybe even 17, 16 years old, and some of the single moms of the girls that I dated were hitting on me, a 16-year-old. And I was like, "Wait up, Mrs. Robinson, what's going on here?" And I tried to I was embarrassed to tell this to my girlfriend at the time, but I noticed that after I turned down the mother, the daughter would say, "Nah, you're not the right one for me." I didn't ask why, and they didn't tell me why. All I can assume is something happened at that point. Maybe the single mom didn't like that a 17-year-old, 18-year-old me turned them down. And women can be, nasty to a man that turns them down. It happens. It happens all the time. They're going to do that. Some of the single girls that the girls that I've dated in my younger years, that had single moms, would tell me of their stepfathers, that they had a sexual relationship with their stepfathers. And I'm not talking about one or two of my ex-girlfriends. I'm talking about a few of them. Right? Now, after a while, I thought, wait up, it's probably just a fantasy. And I would confide with my male friends and some of my female friends about this, and some of my male friends said, she's lying about rape, she's lying about her stepfather. And I didn't believe that wholeheartedly at the time, but after a while it made some sense. So if you're thinking about getting married to a single mom with a daughter, understand that this daughter might have some sort of flirtatious behavior towards you, and there is nothing you could do if she said that you touched her inappropriately. If you were the father, she wouldn't do that, or most likely she wouldn't do that. You have enough problems in your life. You're going to invite a woman that has problems that are not yours, that she's going to throw on your lap? No way. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Just walk away. Okay? I had a girlfriend who's, again, another girlfriend that was a single mom. Another girlfriend that had a mother that had a single mother. And again, this is like my early 20s. And she was very close to her aunt, and her aunt cornered me in a room and started hugging me and kissing me in my neck. And I was like, wait, this is not what's happening here. I didn't want to be part of that. Again, I turned her down. I pushed her away. This is not happening. The next day, my girlfriend didn't want to talk to me. I don't know what happened. I'm not about to see what's happening. What was I supposed to do? Force my ex, the girl, to talk to me? And what happened? She's going to say, hey, I'm stalking her, and call the cops, order protection. Forget about it. You don't need it. You don't need it. You don't need the problems of somebody else. You would sacrifice your life, your work, your freedom to work extra hours to provide for your children. And I got to talk to you about this word providing. If a woman's going to see you as a provider, stay away from her. Stay away from her. Seriously. Because you know something? You're not a provider. You are a man. You are a human being. You're not a provider. And if a woman is looking for a provider, then who's providing for her now? Who is actually providing for this woman who's seeking a provider? Stay away from that. Question it. Question it until it's you're blue in the face. Why do you call me a provider? Well, no. I am a man, and you are a woman, right? And I am not your provider. I've often talked to other people about my grandparents. My grandfather stalked my grandmother. My grandmother was a housemaid at the Plaza Hotel and on Park Avenue in New York City. And my grandfather, who just got off the boat, liked her and paid, and this is an actual true story. He paid, or he tipped the doorman of the building to tell my grandfather when my grandmother was coming out of the building and what exit. And after 2 weeks of, courting, nowadays it's going to be called stalking, my grandparents got married. They had, my grandparents had 2 kids. Actually, they had 3 kids. One passed away very, very young. And they lived together to the day, my grandfather died, and that was it. Most women will say, well, that was then. That's their explanation. That was then. That's their whole complete explanation of why 2 people lived together in harmony for, 50 years. That's their explanation. That was then. Three-word explanation. But why am I bringing this up? My grandfather was called into, my grandfather came to this country and he enlisted in the World War II, he was a proud American. He was from the island of Cyprus in the Mediterranean. And he came to this country. He was proud to be an American and went to war. And for 2 years, they didn't have email. They didn't have, they barely had letters, written letters and everything. But my grandfather did what he had to. And for 2 years, he served in the military during World War II. I like to see what women say. They don't have enough attention. My grandmother raised 2 kids on her own, working hard as a housemaid, supporting children, 2 children. There was no welfare back then. There was no welfare back then. There was no food stamps back then. There was nothing back then. My grandmother didn't complain about the lack of attention she had from my grandfather being in war. My grandfather barely wrote English and sent a couple of letters home. And when he came home, everything was back to normal, and my grandmother was working and my grandfather was working as well. Now, when women want to sit on their ass and say, you're the provider, well, guess what? No. You're going to contribute to this household. You are going to contribute to this household. And if you're not, you got to leave. And a lot of guys look at a girl, and I did this too. They say, wow, she's gorgeous. She's mine now. Okay. And leave it at that. But there's a lot of things you have to do that women won't. You have to put your foot down and say, hey, what are you doing for me? And if it's only sex that you're getting in return, stop it. Stop it, really. Because if you are giving your resources and everything, and she's only giving you sex, there's only one occupation that receives money for sex. She has to be doing something. And if you're in a relationship with a single mom that is going to spend a lot of time and effort for her kid, because it's not your kid. I don't care how much you say it's your kid. It's not your kid. I've talked to people who married single moms, and they raised a daughter or a son, or sons and daughters, or whatever, since age 2. And when the kid turns about 17, all of a sudden the father out of nowhere comes out. Comes out of the woodworks. I want to see my kids. Well, now you got to see. You don't have to. You're not contending with a picture In a photo album, you're contending with the person, right? You have to tolerate that. You have to tolerate the idea that, you know, if you're in a relationship with a single mom, you got to tolerate that every other weekend you're going to see her ex-lover come knocking on the door, you know, for not child support, but visitation. And when he misses 2 or 3 payments of child support because he's out of work, whatever, because that happens to you, it happens to me, we're out of work, we're out of, you know, we don't have, you know, a constant flow of never-ending money all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When that happens, she's going to take that man to court. And guess what? You have to deal with her complaining about what she did in court. You're going to have to probably take a day off of work to go with her, moral support, to court over her ex-lover. So she doesn't want you to talk about your ex-lovers. You don't want pictures of your ex-lovers in a photo album. She doesn't want you to have pictures of other women in your you know, smartphone device or whatever. Then you got to wonder. But, you know, you have to tolerate her kids. You have to tolerate that you cannot discipline her kids. You got to deal with the fact that you have to see the face of the father of those kids every other weekend when they have their visitations. You're going to have to deal with the complaints. You're going to have to deal with whatever you have to deal with. I mean, come on. She's going to have fights with her ex-lover. She's going to have fights with her ex-lover. The cops are going to have to be called. Trust me, it has no place in your life. It has 0 place in your life. It had nothing to do with your life. I feel bad for the children because I was a child of a single mom, and let me tell you something. Single moms will never, ever, ever say they did wrong. When I was about 9 years old, divorce, I never seen my father till I was like maybe 14, 15, and I stopped seeing him for like when I was 22, and I re-seen him about 10 years ago. One thing about divorce affected me so much that around age 7 or 8, maybe even 9, I wanted to find out why people divorce, because I thought that, you know, the more the merrier, and two's company, not two's company, three's a crowd, and, you know, things were simpler if you did them with somebody else. You know, you had 2 income coming in, and that'd be great, you know, but I didn't understand why people divorced when I was 9 years old, 7 or 8, whatever. So I started asking questions of people why they divorced. And in my studies from age whatever, 8, 9, whatever that was, until now, I have never, ever, ever heard a woman say, well, my husband left me because I had an affair. Or because I was, no. I heard men say, hey, my wife left me because I was, I fooled around too much, I drank too much, I this too much, I that too much, whatever. But I've never heard any woman pointing the finger of fault to themselves when stating what happened in a divorce. So you're going to get one-sided, you're going to have one-sided story as to why she divorced this man. And believe me, she divorced him. She divorced him because maybe she liked bad boys. And she liked the gangster, thug, criminal, the substance abusers. the sweet talkers and the cheaters. That's all they like. They like the jerks. But you're gonna have to do if she likes you, then she likes you because you're a sucker. You're a sucker. That's why she likes you. And let me tell you something. I used to be a reader and a follower of Anthony Robbins. You know, the success guru. And not you know, I read a couple of his books. I went to a couple of his seminars. You know, and I thought he was, you know, spot on with a lot of things. And he talks about, you know, well, you know, when he was younger, in his younger years, he got married to somebody. He wanted a family, so he had an instant family when he married this woman. Right? He had instant family when he married this woman. Well, when all the kids turned 18, 19 years old, and all the college was paid for, she divorced him. He was her sucker. You know? Anthony Robbins was that woman's sucker. Right? She don't want him no more. When Howard Stern, building his house, building his, you know, beautiful house, you know, Howard Stern, a radio personality, he was married, and as soon as the kids grew up, boom, divorced. So, you can't, I'm going to tell you something. If these people cannot work relationship with all their money and power and fame, everything that a woman likes, how are you going to do it? So what you have to do is right here and right now. How are you going to make my life better? How are you going to make my life easier? And that's it. You don't jump in and try to make their lives easier, because they don't give a rat's behind about you. They don't care about you. They don't want to care about you. You are their financial provider, and that's it. You are their personal ATM card. And single mothers are the absolute worst. And I've dated a couple of single moms in my life. And the first date was okay. The second date, they bring their son along. You know? Third, fourth date, you go out to a nice dinner, they order extra food, and, oh, this is for my son. Oh, and you're not contributing for the financials of the meal. All right? You know? Let me ask you a question. You marry a single mother. You got to get permission from the father to bring the child to Disneyland. If you want. If that's what you want. You want to go on a vacation in Cayman Islands or something like that, or you want to go tonight, you got to get permission from the father. Now, I don't want to get permission to do anything in my life, let alone some man who I don't even know. So don't do this, fellas. You got a single mom you got a girlfriend that's a single mom, she's going to cry that, you know, this guy was bad to me, this guy was not right to me, this guy didn't do enough, and watch that word enough. Watch that word enough. Because if a sentence ends in enough, he didn't or he didn't give me enough attention. What does that mean? What does that mean? Does it mean he gave a little attention and that's not enough? Did he give a lot of attention and that's not enough? Did he give all that he could and that wasn't enough? Or what? What is enough? You know, you have to listen very carefully to what these women are saying, because they're not going to point their guilty finger at themselves as to why their marriage broke up. All right? They love the bad boys. And don't be their suckers. Do not be their suckers. You are better than that. You are so much better than that, that you shouldn't even be looking at the idea of them being your wife, because they're the ones that divorce. 80% of all women, 80% of all divorces are initiated by women. And I'm going to tell you something. In this day and age when marriage has gone down, I would say the breakups of couples, not even marriage, we're talking about couples, are initiated by women. So even though there's legal documentation and a clear-cut evidence of women actually leaving their spouses, there is nothing in the studies that say women break up, couples, or women are the ones that break up in couples that are not married, because there's no divorce lawyer in breaking up girlfriend boyfriends. You understand? So women are the initiators of breakups. They're going to find a guy and they're going to say, well, he's too this, he's too that, he's not enough this and not enough that, and he doesn't do what he doesn't do. And they will find a reason to complain. They're going to find a reason to complain what is not good. So, if you get into a relationship with a single mom, are you getting a woman that's forgiving? No, not at all. Because forgiveness is not in her line of sight when she's divorcing a man. She don't want anything to do with him. She turned off her love for another man. And now she wants you to be her breadwinner. I want you to be my breadwinner until my kids are old enough, and then goodbye. You think happily ever after? It's not going to happen. You understand? Single mothers is a cancer. Single mother is a cancer. When I was a kid, I grew up in the projects in New York City. My mother was a single mom. And every single person, the only people that were in my projects were single moms with kids, cripples, and elderly. And there was a single father that moved into the house. And you want to know what they said about him? Oh, he's no good. He's, this and that. And he was a, very quiet guy. And they would say, oh, he's not, this and that. Oh, what's he doing here? What is he doing here? Like, these single mothers that I grew up with were talking bad about a single father that moved in with his son in an apartment in the projects. Like, they have this disdain for this man. There was a disdain for that man that lived in the projects. But they would all, I grew up with people who had 3 or 4 stepbrothers, stepsisters. And the mother was sleeping around with somebody else, and this is government housing. There wasn't government housing when my grandparents were alive, and they were starting out their lives. My grandfather wasn't the richest man in the world. My grandfather worked hard in restaurants as a longshoreman, and he was, he didn't speak English well. He spoke English well when I knew him, but when starting out in this world, my grandmother was the daughter of an immigrant, and let me tell you something. Women of today are looking for instant millionaires to be their providers, and they are not willing to provide for themselves. This has been the XY Ghost. Stay prosperous. Stay honorable. Like, comment, and share. And have a good life.